your best strategy depends on what the other person does, there is no dominant strategy. I'll go ahead and start the question. All right, everybody said refrigerate? Right on. Refrigerate's the right answer. Very good. You can think your way through that. You can do all these questions. We actually shouted out the answer with this so you might remember. But try to think through the game. Suppose that you're the wife. Suppose you know your husband's going to the opera. Which one is best for you? Then suppose you know the husband's going to football. Which one is best for you? If there's one strategy that's always best for you, regardless of what your husband does, that's the dominant strategy. If what you want to do depends on what your husband does, there is no dominant strategy. I'll put answer up. Good. There is no dominant strategy. And here's why. Let's suppose that you're the wife. If you know your husband's going to the opera, you'd rather go to the opera too because 3 is better than 0. This is battle of the sexes where the husband have different preferences, but they want to be with each other more than anything. So it's nothing like a real marriage. Then suppose that your husband's going to football. Would you rather go to opera and get 0 or football and get 2? Well, if your husband goes to opera, you want to go to opera. If your husband goes to football, you want to go to football. Because what you want to do depends on what your husband does. There is no one strategy that's always best. There is no dominant strategy. And most of you got that. Very good. The PPF curves. True-false question. Shows the combination of goods, the PPF curve. This thing right here, just suppose that this one's for the U.S., the PPF curve. This is one that's on your homework. The statement that it shows the combinations of goods a country can consume if it trades with other countries. Is that statement true or false? And apparently now we have 20 seconds. It's a deceiving question. The answer is false. And this is why. This line right here, it tells you what you can produce. It's called a production possibility frontier. So it only tells you what you produce. And what you can consume when you trade, that may be a different thing. That's the whole point of this exercise. This point A. This PPF curve shows that the U.S. cannot produce at point A. True or false? True. Good. That's right. These are your possibilities right here. You cannot get out there producing on your own. It's impossible. Very good. Now, same thing. Point A, the U.S. might be able to consume 150 veggies and 130 meat, but only if it trades with other countries. True. Good. You're right. The whole point of what we did last time was to develop this little model to show you that the only way you can get something for nothing, get above this curve, is with trade. That's the whole point. You've got this equation. This is the equation for a PPF curve. It's like meat is on the y-axis and veggies is on the x-axis, like the curve we just saw. What is the opportunity cost of veggie production? What you want to do is you want to look at that equation and say, if you get one more veggie, how many meat do you give up? Based off that equation. Two meat, that's right. Good. And here's how you want to think about it. What I do is I just look at that equation, and I just picture veggies, whatever number that is, I picture it going up by 1. Well, 1 more is multiplied by -2. So veggies goes up by 1, meat has to go down by 2. That's what the equation tells you. Get 1 more veggie, you have to give up 2 meat. Now, here's a little trick. The next question is going to be the same except it's going to ask, what's the opportunity cost of meat production? A quick way is to say, well, the opportunity, because it's easier for me to answer with the veggies on the left. And if the opportunity cost of veggie is 2 meat, the opportunity cost of meat is going to be the reciprocal of that. Or you just look at the equation and try to figure it out. Based off that equation, what's the opportunity cost of meat production? How many veggies do you give up to get 1 more meat? Want to have veggies? Right. And you look at that equation and you say, well, if meat goes up by 1, for this equation to stay equal, veggies are going to have to go down by half. 1/2 times 2 equals 1 equals 1. Very good. Okay, good. A lot of that stuff we just did, that's part of homework 4. The announcements, I'm a professor. I go on vacation anytime I want, so I never pay attention to what university holidays are. I had no idea MLK Day was coming up soon. And so what I did for homework 2 and 3, I extended the deadline to the Tuesday after MLK. Homework 4, nothing's changed about homework 4 right now. This is just saying we're starting clickers. All we're doing today, we're going to take some notes on that article. It's kind of doing a Cliff Note version of that article. Just listen to me for a moment. Ideas are important. All of the big travesties in life, Nazism, fascism, communism, those were ideas. Ideas started by intellectuals like me. Ideas are important, very important, the most important thing. Economics is called the dismal science, but I don't think so. When I think of economics, I see things like this. And to me, I see that and I think the word harmony. Things that normally nature wants to oppose against each other are living together in peace. And that is the big message of economics. For most of human history, people thought the only way you could get richer is taking from someone else. If our wealth came from the land, the only way you can get more wealth is to own more land. And so it was a zero-sum game. That's how we thought about wealth in the past. But now we are quite sure that if we trade with each other, society can be win-win. You can get richer as I get richer. We can all get richer together. And just look in the last 100 years, that's certainly what's happening. That's this miracle called trade. For a lot of reasons, those reasons that we're starting to see now, we can live in harmony. By commerce, trading with each other, buying and selling. It's a good thing. It's a moral thing. There's a saying, it goes something like, if commerce goes across borders, armies won't. The idea is that 100 years ago, if U.S. and China was the most powerful countries, everybody would just assume that we're going to fight each other at some point. But now, U.S. and China have very tight relations in the way of commerce. We trade on an unprecedented level. Our prosperity depends on their prosperity. That's why they got so scared when we went into a recession. There will be, I think, almost no impetus from citizens of either country to go to war with each other. Because we're working with each other now. We're buying and selling with each other. And it's not adversarial. We now believe China can get richer just as we are. China becoming big and wealthy, to me as an economist, that's not a threat. That's a good thing. By the way, it may have seemed odd that I never put a link to this class on D2L. The reason is because I have a lot of copyrighted material on my class. I had to make absolutely sure that OSU agreed with my interpretation of the fair use rule. That is now the case, so now I have a link to the website on D2L. Just explaining something that might seem strange to you. Wednesday, there will be a guest speaker. But it's not, normally when you have a guest speaker, they come and talk to you, not tested on. That will not be the case for this. You will know exactly what you're tested on. Let me just warn you, this is one of the most brilliant people in the world. You can learn a lot from him. He may curse a lot. Okay? He's a little rough around the edges. He comes from a different culture. So just be patient with him. Give him the benefit of the doubt. But don't worry, I've made sure he's going to let you know exactly what you're responsible for. Okay, I want to go now to notes on the board. In labs, we learned that the Pilgrims were socialists, but they were also drunks. They drank a lot of beer. Women, children, men. It was very, very weak beer, even weaker than your beer. Partly because the beer was safer to drink than water, and it was so weak it didn't dehydrate them. Think of the Northeast Pilgrims in the Yankee states. At first, they needed a lot of beer, but they couldn't grow the barley and wheat themselves because the varieties they brought from England just didn't grow in New York, Massachusetts. And so they couldn't grow their own stuff for beer. So they had to import beer. But it got really expensive. And then the settlers figured out, well, you can import sugar molasses pretty easy. In the sugar plantations down south, where they made cane sugar, this molasses was a byproduct, and the only thing you could really do with it is make rum. And at first, the Pilgrims started importing a lot of rum. They replaced beer with rum. But then they figured out, well, instead of just buying the rum itself, they could just import the sugar molasses. And that's what they did. And then, over time, the Northeast colonies ended up being huge rum producers. And 80% of their exports at one point was rum. Now think of that. New York exporting 80% rum, rum made from sugar. Sugar cannot be grown anywhere near North New York or Massachusetts. So their big trade industry was in a product that they were completely unsuited to make. There's no, it's hard to think of a place more unsuited to rum production than New York. But it ended up being one of their biggest industries. But we're going to see why that is the case. Why sometimes with trade there are things that matter other than the resources you have and your climate and your setting and things like that. My metaphor for trade I use a lot is Robinson Crusoe. Raise your hand if you've read the book Robinson Crusoe. It's not written like a novel. When you read it, you would think that it was a true story. It's kind of dull at times. It's so documentary-like. Well, one of the reasons is that the author, the book is really a fraud in many ways. It's fiction. He made it up. But when he went to publish it and sell it, he told people it was real, that there was a real person named Robinson Crusoe. And it was that person who really wrote this book, and everything that happened in here was true. He spent large parts of his life promulgating that lie. Eventually, we figured out the lie, but it was still a neat book. And it makes a good metaphor for us. If you haven't read the book, if you can think of the movie Cast Away with Tom Hanks, that's a lot like Robinson Crusoe, and that is one man stranded on an island for a long time, one person all alone, can do very little for himself. It was a hard life. But in the book, like 20 years after he's been on the island alone, he meets someone named Friday, a primitive, or a native from there. And so now, Crusoe has a friend named Friday. And now they can work together. And now, even though the person is a friend, it's also a trading partner. Meaning they can produce different things and share. Maybe Robinson Crusoe, there was this one fish that he couldn't catch well. But Friday, who was taught by his parents how to fish there, he can catch that fish. Now, Robinson has access to a new fish that he could never catch before because of Friday's presence. Just like we benefit by trade by getting things that we can't really produce ourselves. We can grow bananas anywhere in the U.S. in a greenhouse. It's really expensive. But by trading with places like Costa Rica, we can get access to things that we can never produce ourselves at a reasonable price. Kind of like Friday. Well, also what happened, Robinson and Friday had different talents and they had different preferences. And so when they were milking their goats and managing their herds, they would both specialize in different things. Just like Wu-Tang Clan and No-Tang Clan were better at one thing than another, and they did what they were best at in trading, and they were both better off. And it's also the case, what we're going to be really looking at and say, well, what if more people than Friday came? What if now the island, imagine it's a big island, start inhabited by a lot of people? Well, now trade can get really beneficial because now, instead of milking 2 goats or 20, you can milk 200. Get this thing called economies of scale, division of labor, and start getting really efficient. And that's mainly what we're going to be talking about. We are going to take notes in a minute. But we're going to be looking at why is it that when we trade with more people and our extent of the markets that we trade get big, all these businesses get big. It seems like every product you buy is from a huge company. Everything, there are very few farmers because to be a farmer now, you have to be really, really big. Why does everything get big? That's what we'll be talking about. Let me show you a quick clip from a documentary called King Corn about farms having to get bigger and bigger.
Just south of this corner here, we farm that up there. And then this is George Uhlenhoff. We farm his land right here. And then this is my mom's farm. We farm that. And that's our other grain farm right up there with the big bins on it. So that's another farm of ours. Farmers are, the ones that are in it are getting bigger. You either have to be in a pretty good size or you can't get squeezed out.
How many bushels do you expect to get off an acre?
1,000.
That acre greenhouse.
One thing I've noticed over the years is the little farmers getting out of it and the big farmers getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And the government pays the farmers and it's just a big grain operation and I think they're getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
The reason why farms have to be really, really big to exist nowadays, there's no simple answer. But for those who need to kind of understand these issues. Everybody's in agreement that many times when a business gets bigger, it takes advantage of economies of scale. And that gets us cheaper products. That's at the end. That's at the end of these notes we're going to get to. I'm going to start back from the beginning. We're going to take notes on how we benefit from trade. I'm highlighting the three main ways we benefit from trade. We're kind of doing cliff notes of that article. Parties can benefit from trade by and when we're talking about parties, it can be two people, Robinson Crusoe and Friday, two states, Texas and North Dakota, two countries, U.S. and Costa Rica. Parties can benefit from trade by doing the sections A, B, C, acquire new goods, heretofore unavailable. This is the obvious one. We want to trade with other countries because there's simply some things we can't really produce ourselves, like bananas from Costa Rica. And here the benefits derive from differences in the regions. Benefits derive from regional differences. So it makes sense that you would want to trade with people who can do different things, who are different than you. That's obvious. It's not obvious, the end of obvious, that you can benefit from trading with people who are identical to you. B, the second one is going to be acquire stuff through comparative advantage. And that's what we did last time. So that each region produces the thing it does at the least opportune cost. Each party produces the stuff they have a CA comparative advantage in. They're going to export some of it and import what they don't produce. Let's say import what they don't make. And there's one other thing we want to write about that. It's obvious that we want to trade with Costa Rica because they can produce things that we can't. They can produce bananas a whole lot better than us. But remember in the case of Wu-Tang and No-Tang Clan? Both could produce grain and salmon. Each kind of specialized, but they could both produce grain and salmon. It's not like No-Tang needed Wu-Tang just to get grain or just to get salmon. And similarly, we can benefit by trading with other people, other countries, even if we're good at producing everything. And so are they. You can still benefit. This allows gain from trade, this comparative advantage. I'm just following on this. Even if both parties produce everything efficiently. Now we're getting to the new stuff. This is where we see that even if people or parties or countries are identical, you can still get gain from trade. In this case, even if everybody produced everything efficiently, different parties can still have a comparative advantage in one thing or another. And you can still gain from trade. Now I would say even if parties are identical, there's another country identical to the U.S. in every way, we can still gain from trading with them. It doesn't have to be these countries. This is where we get into the economies of scale stuff in big business. Acquire more stuff through division of labor, acronyms when I can, and economies of scale. Economies of scale is one of those words that you don't want to be in any part of the private sector without understanding economies of scale. It's a term that's used all the time. It's pretty simple. Can I put that screen down, y'all through right and see? You probably already have a pretty good intuitive grasp of economies of scale. Robinson Crusoe milked goats on his island. There were native goats there. So I want to think about milking goats. Now, Robinson milked them by hand. There were no machines there or anything. It was just him most of the time, sometimes Friday. So he had a very primitive system of milking. We use the word capital to mean things like equipment and machine. There was no capital Robinson had on the island. Big farms today, they'll have automatic milkers for goats. I don't know how well you can see it, but this is a goat, and there's the milk, and sucks it out just like in a milk farm. Suppose that Robinson only milked 5 goats a day. Suppose there was someone else on the mainland, and this is supposed to be ridiculously easy question, milks 1,000 goats a day. Which person, Robinson or the other person, is more likely to use this more advanced method? The 1,000. Why? Why would Robinson not want to shell out the money for that? Yeah.
Not cost effective.
Yeah, because he's only milking 2. The machines are very expensive. You only get like a gallon a day. You're not going to be able to cover the cost of that machine. So you know this already. You know that only big businesses can make large capital investments, buy big factories, buy expensive equipment. You also know that this capital makes us much more efficient workers. You can milk a whole lot more milk from goats using this system than that system. You already know all that if you just think about it. So what you already know is that the only way you can milk goats efficiently at low cost is if you milk a lot of goats, you get big and can afford this equipment. So if you're following all that, you just concluded that getting bigger, milking more goats, harvesting more hay, more corn, making more computers, lets you do things more efficiently because you can afford capital. And that's why businesses get big. That's why farms are getting so big. Because only big farms can afford a lot of the equipment and machinery that makes production so efficient. Now we're going to write some brief notes on all that stuff I just said. New trading partners. Like if we were not trading with Cuba before and now we trade with Cuba, increases the number of potential customers for a business. Robinson was not, even if he could buy that equipment on the island, he was not going to buy it if he only milks 5 goats. But if there were 1,000 people on the island, maybe he would buy that fancy equipment and start milking a lot of goats. Those more trading partners, it increased the number of potential customers he could sell milk to, which allows him to get bigger. Allowing a business to become larger. When we say become larger, I'm sure we understand that part of that means produce more. If we now start a trade with Cuba, there are some people, some businesses who produce things that Cubans would want. Those are new customers. You can produce more because now you have more customers. And being able to produce more lets you get bigger, which lets you do this. As production / sales, when we're selling everything that we produce, as that increases, not always, but businesses may exhibit economies of scale. You define that acronym just a few sections above. Where the per unit production costs fall. access to new customers, lets you get bigger, lets you produce more, lets you exhibit these economies of scale and produce at a lower cost than people who are smaller. Which is why big farms crowd out the small farms. Price goes down and only the big farms can make a profit. Which is why dairy farms today are absolutely huge. You know, like 10,000 animals. It's ridiculous how big new dairy farms are. While there used to be hundreds and thousands of brewers all across the United States, little brewers, except the last 10 years, these craft brews, brewers got really, really big. Budweiser and Coors, they can produce such cheap beer because they're so huge. I used to brew beer at home, and I did it in 5-gallon buckets. And it was very, especially if you include my labor, it was very inefficient. Especially if you include all the explosions that occurred. I didn't have all that capital that made me efficient. Budweiser does. So it's much more costly for me to produce than Budweiser does. A little more. So why? Why do we have these economies of scale? We already said it once. Because only a big business can make large capital investments. Make sure you understand that when I say capital investments, we're talking about equipment and machines. With this because, there's going to be two becauses. A big business can employ division of labor. Using our Robinson example, before Friday came, Robinson had to do every aspect of goat production, from herding and caring for the goats to milking. But now with Friday, maybe they have a division of labor. Friday says, I'll take care of the goats, be the shepherd, be the herder. You take care of all the milking. And when they do that, they specialize. Because Robinson is only milking, he gets really, really good at milking. Because Friday is only a herder, he gets really, really good at herding. And when everybody gets more efficient, the economy gets more efficient. You can produce more stuff. Where workers specialize. Say, specialize in specific tasks. I have one other thing in common. Let's just say getting really good at it. Do you understand the point? Let me ask you something. You got one more sentence in you? Can you do it? Because it's either one or two. You'll two, okay, 2 sentences. Thus, two parties benefit from trade. even if they're identical. Because Robinson and Friday could have been identical. But you know, the Mill 4 still lets you get bigger fire equipment, and you can still have the vision of labor, which then lets you get good at things, and then you become different once you do this. Contrary to what your student said, he wanted 2 more sentences. Call me unpopular, but I say let's just end this right. Let's just end this.
He wants his money's worth.
What's that?
He wants his money's worth.
No, you're not going to get money's worth here. Have a nice weekend. I'll see you in